Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast about other podcasts. Where each week we dive deep into a podcast and have a book club style discussion. And guess what? At the end of the episode, we'll bring you a brand new podcast for you to go out and listen to. We'll come back next week and discuss that one. I'm Josh.
I'm Kirk.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Daniel.
And guys, you ever heard of Patreon? We got one. It's a little website where you can go on there, and if you love our show, you can show your support. Sign up at a couple of different levels. Kirk, what are the different levels that we have?
So we have basically a $4 level, which breaks down to like 50 cents an episode. Real cheap. And then we have a $8 level, which is, it breaks down to it. I just made it simple, a dollar an episode, because, you know, we put out 8 shows a month most of the time. And it's real simple, and any little bit helps us out. The show's not free to make, but we've been making it for a long time, and we really enjoy doing it. And it would just be really cool to get a little feedback that you enjoy it as well.
Yeah, cover the cost of hosting and things like that. And one of the things we're looking at is getting stickers printed and T-shirts and things like that, and really expanding some merch and things like that as well. And those are the types of things that we would use money raised from Patreon for, is to kind of give back to the show and continue to expand the show and provide things to our listeners that really love the show. So
yeah, at the $8 level, we're going to send you guys some stickers, a little bit of swag. And at the $4 level, we have exclusive outtakes that are great and amazing. And they didn't make the cut for very good reasons, but I have curated them to where they're pretty funny little outtakes.
Yeah, they're really good. They're shared amongst us every week. Whenever we're editing the podcast, we get the outtakes dropped into our Slack channel. And
since we've had the show for 2 years, we've got a lot of outtakes to go through to give you guys a little bit of extra PDS love. And
but yeah,
fun.
we basically mentioned this because we've recently revamped the Patreon, where before it was there, but there was nothing on it.
Yeah,
now,
we didn't really offer anything.
Now there's stuff. So if you want to get exclusive content, we got it. You're going to get bloopers. We're working on some other cool things that'll be coming here in the future. There's stuff to look at now. So if you're a fan of the show and want to support us, you have that capability now.
Yeah, and if you're not in a place where you're able to financially support the show, you can also go on iTunes, leave us a rating and review. That means just as much to us. It means the world to us. So you can do that as well. So I guess we'll get into it. So this week we're going to be talking about a podcast called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, starring Conan O'Brien, obviously. It'd be weird if he wasn't in it, right?
That would be next level.
And
He'd probably be mad about it.
He probably would be mad about it.
It's just a weird podcast dedicated to saying why Conan O'Brien needs a friend from an outside perspective.
Yeah, that's kind of hurtful.
It is. But no, it's a great podcast, and each week he has in different friends and comedians and people he knows and special guests, and they just kind of talk about stuff, about usually what the other guest is doing and how they've interacted with each other in the past, different things like that. So I chose specifically the episode with Andy Richter because they've known each other for 30 plus years, or around 30 years. They've been friends. It's insane. And so I thought the chemistry between those two has always been amazing every time they've been on screen together. So I figured it'd be great in a podcast as well. And boy, did it not disappoint.
So, boy, did it not disappoint. Oh, yeah.
Boy, did it deliver.
There we go.
There it is.
Now I understand.
It delivered me the happies.
Should do a double negative. Boy, did it not
Disappoint.
not.
It didn't not disappoint me.
I didn't know a lot about Conan O'Brien until just recently. I found his show on Netflix where he like travels abroad and just meets people, and I fell in love with his humor because he's hilarious. And I find it interesting in like that kind of comedy because most of these guys, they have a room of writers that are writing all of this stuff for them, but they also have to have that like comedic talent as well. Like maybe they might not be able to be stand-up comedians, but they have this ability to be able to riff off of each other. Specifically, people like him is going to be interviewing people, and he's like a genius at being able to it's almost like improv in a way, because you don't know what the other person's going to say, but he just goes with it, and I love it.
Yeah, I was never really big on late night stuff, but I did connect to Conan's show. And I remember, I think the main time where I kind of picked it up was when he was getting all the heat and everything weird was going on with Leno and with The Tonight Show. And they moved it to TBS, and I decided to check it out, and I liked it. You know, I've never really been into that format so much, but I always thought that he was pretty genuinely funny and fun to watch.
Conan's fun because he's very genuine, and his shows have like a very like easygoing flow to them, and he's always very natural in what he's doing. It's not like super forced, where I feel like a lot of the late night stuff is. He kind of accepts it for what it is, and is just very comedic and just brings his flavor to the table. And
I wonder if it helps that he accepts that he's awkward and goofy.
Yes.
And he leans into that
Yes.
because he makes things like awkward on purpose, and it makes it really funny.
he almost like caricaturizes himself with his hair and like
Yeah, they even talked about how like he stands out like a Mardi Gras float when they go anywhere.
Yes.
And it's so true because he's like 85 foot tall and he has bright red hair. It's like ridiculous. You can't-
85-foot tall.
it's a big
He's
Conan.
very tall.
Yeah.
He is.
And him and Andy Richter both have a very kind of goofy, I don't want to say childlike because I feel like that kind of takes away and diminishes what it is, but they have that very like goofy, innocent sense of humor where it's a lot of times like there's smart stuff and there's well thought
It's like
stuff,
an immature sense of humor.
but there's things that are, it's just like a goofy, fun
the way I would-
playfulness. in
It
their
almost
humor.
seems like a negative connotation, though. What would
Right.
be the neutral of?
Yeah, it does seem negative.
Because
But
it's not like innocence, but it's, I don't know.
It's
That's a
very
tough one to
very
describe.
playful. Like it's very playful. It doesn't take itself too
it's like
seriously.
fart and poop jokes all the time.
Right.
That's why Kirk was immediately on board with this episode.
Like Bill Burr always rages, and his thing is he rages about stuff, and that's his humor. And some people have very like twisty, turny, thought provoking humor, and theirs is just it's very playful, and they just kind of follow rabbit trails and riff on things, and it's hilarious. Like the whole bit where they talked about where he's like, oh yeah, we used to fight all the time as kids. Like we'd be punching each other in the face, and then my dad would flip over the table and break off the table leg and start beating the hell out of us with the table leg. Then my mom came out of the bedroom with a chain, and she just started whipping the chain on stuff. They called us the Fighting O'Briens. Just it's like, what is that?
yeah.
What is that? It's hilarious. I was cracking up when he was just going through that
Yeah, that
whole
was
bit.
before the show even started. He was just
Yeah.
talking to his producer and his assistant.
yeah, and that's his personal assistant. Like,
yeah,
you
sounds
will
like she's been a part of like everything that
Yeah,
he's
he-
ever had to do.
he refers to her on the show, like on his TV show,
Mm-hmm.
and all the time. You know, she's around. And I think when he was doing the documentary you were talking about, she was there and like organizing all the
Yeah, because
the
he talked
trips.
about being abroad and getting sick and stuff, and that she was the one that would go get the medicine.
Yeah,
and
Sona.
things.
But yeah, really, you can definitely tell that they have 26 years of chemistry because this whole episode ends up being like two people riffing, and they move all over the place, but there's no gaps at all. It's very seamless conversation where they're just being goofy the whole time. You can tell they enjoy being around each other. They razz each other constantly, and they just got into really funny stuff. So if you want to hear just a really funny, it's not really an interview style.
Yeah, because they've been together for so long in a professional sense in comedy that it almost ended up being like just a bunch of different bits and them telling like inside joke stories and stuff like that. One of my favorite things that they told was how like after Conan would interview somebody, Andy, who sits next to whoever he's interviewing, during the commercial break, he would come over to Conan and be like, "Hey, that person had like so many he would tell him all the plastic surgeries
Yeah.
that those people have had."
And they
because-
talked about the guy who had his beard line was behind his ear because he got so many face tucks. I don't know what is it that they like. They literally, I guess, just pull your face, and they like just pull your face back and like suture it. And he said that he saw beard behind the guy's ear.
It's insane.
But yeah, that's
Oh,
apparently that was like a running thing for Andy Richter as he try and figure out what work people had done on their face.
And I think it was hilarious that they talked about how they've been together in comedy so long and been kind of on like doing work together for so long that when people see them in public, they'll ask where the other one is.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's not like we live in the same house and have bunk beds together or something like that. Like we're two individual people, but people always imagine them like the two guys in Step Brothers where they're just like, they have bunk beds and are doing karate together and watching Cops all day.
Was I disappointed when I heard they didn't have bunk beds? Yes, I was. I thought that they did, and I hope they did. But no, I do think that, like, seriously, them together, you would almost immediately put them together. Conan, super recognizable, but if you put Andy by himself, it's less of like the spotlight solely on Andy, so people would be more likely to not immediately pick up on it. And he talked about that, but I could definitely see that if they're ever together,
they like people will see both of them and they'll be like, ask Andy, hey, can you take a picture of me and Conan?
Yeah.
He's like, so I'm just the guy that ends up taking pictures of people with Conan because
Poor
he just looks like
Andy.
a regular guy.
Yeah.
although we talked about this last week, we would recognize him from Elf.
That's what I always that is my like claim to fame in my brain for him. But I've seen him on set with Conan a lot too.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that I thought was hilarious about this podcast was they talked about how back when they first started working together, it was the first time they'd been around like having access to the internet
Oh,
because they've been
man.
working together since like the 90s. And the first time they started working together was one of the first times was public internet access.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a thing before like the 90s. You were on dial-up and it started to become a thing. And one of the things Andy started talking about was pranking people in the early days of the internet. And he's like, this is just, everyone did this back in the early days. And he's saying that. And I'm sure there's some people that are saying, oh, I never did that. That's insane. Who would do that? We definitely did that back in the early days of the internet.
Oh, yeah.
There was something called shock sites is kind of the catch-all term for them. And we would definitely send each other, like back when we were like middle schoolers, I think, we would send each other these shock sites to mess with each other. And so it reminded me of that. And I'm not going to mention any of those shock sites, but please, if you don't know what shock sites are, don't look them up.
Yeah,
You
it's
don't
not
want
worth
to
it.
know what they are.
You don't want to know. That's
Think
the whole
of-
point.
Think of the most just jarring imagery in your face in a lot of different ways. And that's what shock sites are. So we'll leave it at
I
that.
do remember that one time. We can cut this if you want to, but
Yeah.
I just remember that one time that you you got on your brother's computer and you opened like 48 windows of, or did he do that to you?
He did that
He
to
did
me.
that to him.
So,
Well, I did it to him first, and then he did
Okay,
it.
And that was
okay.
retaliation, but
but so there's all these windows open behind each other, and then your mom was the one that actually had the prank pulled on her, and she did not appreciate
she did not.
it.
Yeah, I got
was a
very
bad
grounded
one.
for that
Yeah,
one.
that was not good.
She was not happy about
I
that.
just remember. I think that was one of the only times I heard your mom cuss.
Yeah, she definitely was not happy.
I mean, there also was a more wholesome side to this somewhat because Rick Rolling started shortly after this.
Yep.
And that was the kind of the wholesome, like, I'm going to prank you with the internet because it wasn't anything
That's the
disturbing.
never going to give you up thing,
Yes.
right?
It wasn't anything where you're never going to be able to unsee what you've just seen. It was just a great song.
I always liked getting Rick rolled.
I know that music video is amazing.
I was
Have you
like,
seen
thank
it?
you. Yeah.
It's so good. If you've not watched the Rick Roll music video in its entirety, go back and watch it.
No,
it's
that's how
so
I
good.
dance. That's how I dance.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's almost become not, you can't really Rick Roll people anymore because people are just on board for it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's come back around.
But back then it was, I don't even remember why it became a thing, but you would hide it. You know, you would hyperlink something else. You'd be like, oh, here's the CNN article I just read. And then you'd open it and it's
Yeah.
and then
I just
right into it.
It's funny because now if I ever hear that on like at a restaurant or at a mall or something, I always think of just pranks. I always think of like I always think, oh man, I just got pranked.
Yeah.
I wonder if he got royalties on the pranks.
Oh,
did
I'm
not.
sure.
No, I'm sure
he
that
Oh,
did
he
not.
didn't.
He did not. He didn't get any royalties off his video for like the whole time.
That
It's
sucks.
terrible.
Yep. But he's doing cool stuff now. And I actually, a couple weeks ago on a Todd's, I talked about that choir, the choir,
Yes.
choir,
Yeah,
choir.
yeah.
And he went and did Never Gonna Give You Up with the choir. So it was,
I want to hear it.
he's living his best life now. So yeah, it sucks that he didn't get royalties for that, but now he's doing good. And he's
Doing
like
good
a
stuff.
part of internet legend at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is those skills transitioned into like as an adult working in an office place, I still prank people, but in a much more office friendly way. So like there was a guy that I used to work with when I first started working in like a corporate job. They had like 15 of us in a tiny little room working like shoulder to shoulder doing recruiting. So we were all like on the phones, like making phone calls. And this one guy changed the background on his computer to this like super intense like Batman picture. And I thought it was hilarious because the guy was kind of a goofball. He was kind of like a class clown type guy. He was kind of a goofball. He had this like super intense Batman picture. And so every time he left the room, I would change his background to Justin Bieber or like rainbows and unicorns, just like the opposite direction of Batman. And like the first couple times I did it, like I just like did it when he was gone for like lunch or something. But then it got to the point where I got really good at it. So he could leave. And like Andy Richter was saying, like they would leave for like 30 seconds and they'd come back and it would already be switched. and it's
would you have to have a file on his computer that had like your next prank ready to go?
Yes, you'd have to hide the files on their computer.
I love that.
It's like a multi-step thing.
Yeah.
Like you take the first like 10-second window to like Google search something and like hide it, and then
you send it to them in a message and then you just open the message.
I'll give you guys another classic one. You screenshot their desktop and then you change that to their background to get rid of all their actual folders and their actual icons, because then they're going to click it and they're going to be like, why isn't this working? And it will slowly drive them insane. If you want to add
good. Y'all are evil geniuses.
I did this to my history. I did this to my history teacher in high school.
I remember that story.
And it worked flawlessly. And I hear him click, so I hear like,
"Oh, you talking about Greg?"
Yeah. And so we heard, and then you start slamming the mouse on the thing. He's like, "What's going on here? Why is this not working?" He's like, starts like, you could see him instantly getting like super triggered, and like his blood pressure's going up, and he starts freaking out. And someone's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "My stuff won't work."
That's the thing. It looks exactly the same. That's the best part of it, is it looks exactly the same, but you can't click on anything that's on your desktop.
Doesn't it show like the start bar at the bottom, like double or something?
Nope.
No.
You can hide it.
Yeah, you hide all the stuff that they could actually click. So it's literally
like put it all in one folder.
Yeah, the background is literally all just a picture. And it looks exactly as it'll get them. And then also, if you want to throw in a little extra stuff, you can also invert their mouse.
Yep.
And then they're going to get all messed up.
And then there's the classic where you can change the autocomplete for a word in Microsoft Word. So if they type like the, it autocompletes to like
but,
then or but. If you want to be more subtle, you can make it autocomplete to then. So every time someone tries to type the, it autocompletes to then. And then they start freaking out and they don't know what's going on. But if you want to be more obvious about it, you can make it go. You can make it say "but," or you can, every time they try and type their name, it changes to "but," which makes them even more mad.
That's the thing. There are great pranks, and I would love to see more of what Andy Richter could do with pranking people on the internet, because I guarantee that guy still got it.
Yeah,
he could prank people right now.
He's got the right mindset.
Yes, he does.
He's like a really funny guy.
I also love the fact that every time that the power went out or like the lights would dim or flicker, Andy Richter would go, "My pearls!" Like an old timey like 50s woman.
My favorite thing about that is how much Conan loved it. Yeah, like even Conan just talking about it, he was giggling like a schoolgirl. Yep. And it's just, you can tell that they are friends for a long time, and just they still find like what each other is doing funny, and they still enjoy what they're doing, and it's just fun to see, honestly. You know, and I don't feel like Conan is one of those people, like we said, he's very genuine. And so I felt like they were having a pretty real conversation. It was probably like a conversation would be with them anytime. That I think they were just being their true selves, and it makes it a really fun podcast to listen to.
Yeah, I feel like that's what makes Conan different than a lot of, like, I would say like Jon Stewart or like Stephen Colbert. Like that's their persona. Like that's not probably who they are as people very often, especially Colbert. I mean, that's...
Yeah. No, he clearly was doing like a bit.
Yeah. But Conan, I feel like the Conan you get on the show is probably the Conan that you would get on the street. And I don't know. I like that.
Speaking of Colbert, I saw a video the other day of one of the times where he absolutely lost it on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, where he was like the field correspondent. I'll have to find the link and put it in the show notes. It's hilarious. He was basically doing like a field correspondent thing for Jon Stewart, and could not maintain his composure because the bit he was doing is absolutely ridiculous. It was talking about like I think it was like a gay sex scandal with like the monarchy in England, and the whole time he's like eating a banana and like doing like different stuff. It's hilarious. I can't even put it into words.
He had crazy correspondence at one point. Jon Stewart had like Stephen Colbert and Steve Carell as like two of his like road correspondents on that show. It's like, yep, they're both doing pretty well now. Because Colbert picked up a late night show and is now turned off the Colbert Report like character and is just doing a late night show. So a lot of people have gotten
better
successful.
in the Colbert Report, in my opinion.
That was a really good character
Because he leaned into
really
that
funny.
character, and it was so funny. It was funny because the people that liked him didn't realize they were getting made fun of.
They did
by
not.
him.
Yeah, they did
That's what
not.
the best part. It was
I
like
don't know how
subtle
they
humor.
didn't realize.
Yeah.
I was that way. Like it was like right when I was going to college is when he got popular. Like I thought it was like, oh, Democrats are going to watch Jon Stewart and Republicans are going to watch Stephen Colbert. And they did studies on this.
I went to a small conservative college, and everyone loved Colbert because they thought that was their people.
Yep.
They thought it was real.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things. They did a study on this where there's a lot of people that like they actually studied that phenomenon where Republicans liked it anyways, even though it's kind of poking fun at them. They just thought it was like over the top caricature of like, yeah, it's great. We love it.
It's relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and
So.
he is really funny. The Colbert Report was
Super
really
funny.
funny. But yeah, we don't really have any of that. I mean, The Daily Show's still on, but it just hasn't ever been like as strong without Jon Stewart.
The other show that's like that now is there's an HBO show called Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. It's the closest thing I've seen to that in a long time.
Yeah. And
I
he
think
was a
we need-
correspondent on
Yeah.
Daily Show.
Yeah, he was on Jon Stewart's show as well. I think we need Jon Stewart back. But right now he's out there doing really cool stuff for the first responders, yelling at politicians. But I mean, he's always been good at that. He went on there's some pretty famous clips of Jon Stewart that are great. But yeah, it was definitely a fun podcast to listen to, though. It was one of those things that was entertaining the entire time. I'd love to hear some because this one I feel like is probably different than his episodes as a whole because he knows Andy Richter so much. He's not really trying to get to know anything about him or anything like that. They just had a good time.
Yeah. So Andy himself is starting a podcast, and I think he's got 2 episodes out. So it's very new, and it's called The 3 Questions with Andy Richter. And so he has like a celebrity or somebody on, and he'll ask them 3 questions, and it's like an hour-long episode each time. But he only asks these 3 questions, but somehow it turns into like really, really deep discussion. And he even says he kind of like wants to have therapy sessions with these people without them knowing it. But the 3 questions are: where do you come from? Where are you going? And what have you learned?
I thought this was about to turn into a Cotton Eye Joe joke.
I know.
Where'd you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from? Cotton Eye Joe.
No,
I
it
like
seems
the
like a really cool podcast. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm definitely going to check it out because I like the idea of simple but profound and thought-provoking questions like that to drive a conversation.
Yeah, I listened to one episode on the way here, and I had no point of reference to who he was interviewing, but they got very deep into really like personal stuff very quickly just from those 3 questions. So I thought that was pretty intriguing how quickly he could get into talking about therapy and depression and crazy stuff. But he's still funny, so it still had that levity to it.
Yeah, that sounds like another one we'll have to check out. That's cool.
So the discussion that we're going to have next week is about a show called Crime Junkie. The specific episode is episode 66, Wanted, the Austin Yogurt Shop Killer. And I just read the synopsis of it, and it sounds buck wild. This is a true crime show, so know that going in. It's going to get real intense, I can already tell. And from what I've heard, it does get pretty intense. So it'll be a nice little change for us for a little bit. 'Cause I'm the only one I feel like on here that really likes the true crime stuff. So
I haven't listened to much of it, so I'm interested to give it a listen, and we'll see. But I'm definitely going to be eating frozen yogurt while I listen.
Me too.
Any excuse to eat frozen yogurt, huh?
Yep. No, I'm eating ice cream. Frozen yogurt can suck it.
And remember,
There's always more to discover.
Nailed it.
Thank you for listening to the Podcast Discovery Show. We have a few things we'd like to tell you. First, we would love to hear from you on Twitter at the PDS Official or in our Facebook group, the Podcast Discovery Club.
Secondly, leaving a rating or review on iTunes helps tremendously in giving us visibility and also visibility to the podcast that we recommend. You can also check out our Patreon page to get exclusive bloopers, old episode archives, and other exclusive content while supporting the show.
Finally, seriously, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you about what you love about podcasts. And thank you for being a part of all of the things that we do.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.